Hey, good morning. Michael DDA here. Thank you for joining me. We're starting a new chapter today, Numbers. Hard to believe we've gone through Genesis, Exodus, and Leviticus, verse by verse already in this second set of going through Torah. Time goes so fast. Well, maybe some people don't think it does. I love Jehovah's Word. I just love it. It's so fun to see it and see new things and see how it all fits together. Yeah, there's so many things that we can see if we just open our eyes. And you have to make it make sense to yourself. Don't just assume things are so just because you think that's what it says. I want to give you an example of that. In Exodus, we went through a series of commandments, statutes, judgments. It told us how to set up the sanctuary, how to dress the priests, how to dress the high priest. It gave us lots of statutes and judgments regarding all of that. But we hadn't done it until the very end of Exodus 40. Exodus 40, the very end of Exodus. Look what it says. On the first day of the first month, you shall set up the tabernacle of the tent of meeting. Well, if you will remember, we talked about the ohel of meeting over and over and over and over before this. They set up a tent of meeting. They called it a tabernacle of meeting. In Exodus 19, this is before Yahweh even gave his commandments. And they've been talking about this tabernacle of meeting over and over and over again. Well, finally here, on the first day of the first month of the second year, this is what we're talking about. It says, you shall set up the tabernacle of the tent of meeting. The tabernacle of the tent of meeting. Now it says the Mishkan of the Ohel of Moed, or Ohel Moed. This is going to be the first day that it's being set up. But we don't know, unless we've dug in deeply, that when we look what it says in Leviticus 8. This is the priests being consecrated on the 23rd day of the 12th month of the first year. This is exactly 7 days before the tent of meeting, the tabernacle of the tent of meeting, the real tabernacle, is going to be set up. We jump around quite a lot. And so now from here, they were consecrated starting on the 23rd day, and from the 23rd day of the 12th month until the first day of the first month, when we're going to set up the tabernacle of meeting, truly set it up. And Yehovah is going to come with fire and smoke to his tabernacle. I think that happened at the last of this chapter, didn't it? Maybe not. Was it the next chapter? Yes, I think it was the next chapter. Service in which Yehovah will appear. And Moses and Aaron went into the tent of meeting, the tabernacle of meeting. And tabernacle of meeting. Maybe I don't have that there. Glory of Yehovah. That's the glory of Yehovah. I don't have the tent of meeting. Then the glory of Yehovah appeared. Fire came down from before Yehovah and consumed the burnt offering and the fat on the altar. When all the people saw it, they shouted and fell on their faces. Yehovah has appeared. What we're going to see today is the first day of the second month of the second year that we're coming out. Well, before we Oh, I suppose I should do a brief review of what we did last week. I'm going to do it. That was 27. We finished Leviticus last week. We talked about this. Men dedicating persons. I know we don't like that word persons as it relates to the society that we find ourselves in right now, because we're talking about, but let's talk about souls. I think maybe that make people happier. They usually use nephesh in Torah when we're talking about men and women. Not always, but oftentimes when we're talking about men and women, they'll use the word persons. It says, speak to Israel's seed and say to them, when a man consecrates, dedicates by a vow certain persons, souls, nephesh, to Yehovah, according to your valuation. Whose valuation? It's thy valuation. If thy valuation is of a male from 20 years old to 60 years old, then your valuation shall be 50 shekels of silver. Well, Yehovah goes through this. And, the cynical part of me still feels a bit, even though it does say, thus says, now Yehovah spoke to Moses saying. The cynical part of me is this doesn't flow well with the rest of Leviticus. I hate to say that. There's just cues in here, things that make me feel that it's not, oh, Father, I don't know. Forgive me if I'm in error. There are things in here that seems a bit like a fundraising tactic for the priests. I think it comes from, if anywhere, well, let me just let me just talk about this for a moment. So we're going to dedicate a man. He says we can redeem him back. When a man consecrates by a vow certain persons, we're consecrating by a vow certain persons. Is it to set apart these certain persons so that they have a different status before Yehovah? Can we have a different status before Yehovah? Remember, Yehovah said in Exodus 13, maybe 14, 13, I think. Well, here, let's do this. Here's Numbers 18. Makes it even more clear. But it's in 13 too. It talks about consecrating the firstborn, the Bakor of man and beast, to Yehovah. Listen to what it says in Numbers. It's giving us a little bit more information than it gives us in 13 because it's telling us how much we're going to consecrate him for. It says, every devoted thing in Israel shall be yours. Talking to Aaron and his sons. Everything that first opens the womb of all flesh. Remember, opening the womb is about opening the matrix. A woman being firstborn does not open the matrix. We're talking about seed who produces seed, who produces seed, who produces seed. Men. Nevertheless, the Bakor, again, we're talking about a masculine term, firstborn of a man or firstborn of a beast, the firstborn of a man, you shall surely redeem. Here we're dedicating to Yehovah, consecrating to Yehovah our firstborn, according to his instructions. Now remember, none of the things that we're talking about here is instructions of Yehovah. This is something that we can do if we want to do it. Kind of unusual, even in Leviticus and the rest of Torah. This you can do if you want. So we're going to we're commanded to dedicate our firstborn to Yehovah and then redeem him. How does it say? We're going to see 5 shekels of silver. 5 shekels of the sanctuary, which is 20 gerahs. Let me continue reading. Nevertheless, the firstborn of man you shall redeem. You shall redeem. And the firstborn of an unclean animal you shall redeem. And those redeemed of the devoted things you shall redeem when they are 1 month old. So these are devoted things. You know, I was thinking this morning, I'm a firstborn son. But this says that every devoted thing in Israel shall be yours. My folks weren't in Israel. A lot of people devote, what do we call it? I remember we used to take our children in front of the church and dedication to the Lord. Dedicate our children to the Lord. Was a lot cheaper in the Christian church. But I don't think we were doing anything. We had well-meaning hearts. I know we wanted to have our children follow Yehovah. And we raised good children. He says, and those redeemed of the devoted things you shall redeem when 1 month old, according to your valuation, for 5 shekels of silver, according to the shekel of the sanctuary, which is 20 gerahs. So here is a point where we're actually commanded. So when it says in this verse, I mean, it goes through a whole bunch of things. Here, let me just show you this briefly. Age 20 to 60 are 50 shekels. For a woman, 30 shekels. Age 5 to 20 is a male, 20 shekels. A female, 10 shekels. Age 1 month to 5. Remember, he says, at 1 month old, you shall redeem him, or you shall dedicate him, or redeem. I guess it was redeem him. Age 1 month to 5 years old, 5 shekels, and 3 shekels for a woman. And then an elderly man, 60. Oh, that's me. I lost a lot of valuation here a couple of years ago. 15 shekels and 10 shekels. Well, again, the cynical part of me says, if we can dedicate our son and redeem him back, what if we did that for the whole family? What if we did that for our house? What if we did that for our land? Keeping in mind, we got to deal with the year of Jubilee and all those other kinds of things. And that's what this whole chapter talks about. Towards the end of this chapter, it talks about the firstborn. I don't know if I can find it quickly enough. But the firstborn of the animals, which should be Yehovah's firstborn, no man shall dedicate. No, you can't do it for the firstborn of an animal. Remember, we're talking to Bekor. Zakar of an animal is the male of the animal. All right. Well, yeah. So we don't do this for our firstborn. They're already Yehovah's. These are already Yehovah's. Again, that's the same thing we were just reading you from Numbers 18. Oh, here's a couple more that we were talking about. Consecrate to me the firstborn, whoever opens the womb among Israel's seed, both man and beast is mine. They're already his. We can't dedicate it, something that's already his, or already supposed to be his. Yeah, okay. So we finished this chapter. Now we're going to go to the next chapter. This is Numbers. We saw when we did Exodus, we looked at this also when we began Leviticus, and now we're going to look at it again when we start Numbers. What we're looking at is this word right here. It says now. Now is how it got translated. But this is a vav. Here, let's take a look at it in the Hebrew. Right here is what we're talking about. That letter right there is a vav. It says and. It's a continuation from the last chapter. We're going to talk about this when we begin Deuteronomy once again. But for the purposes of this chapter, I want us to see, we saw Bereshit. We saw Va'elah, talking about, and these are the names on Exodus. Vayikra, and he called. Yahovah called to Moses and spake. As he called. He called. Va-yi, that's the yi is he. He called. Talking about Yahovah. But it's a va. And he called. And now we're looking at this chapter that we're starting today. And he spoke. Va-yikdabar. It says, and spake Moses. He spake is what it's saying. He spake. Moses spake. Just using the proper conjugation for this particular word. But what I want you to see here is the vav. It's a continuation from Leviticus now to Numbers. Part of the same book. When we get to Deuteronomy, there isn't a vav. Why isn't there a vav? Something different. Why is that? We'll talk about it when we get there. This is, look at the verse says, and Yahovah spoke to Moses in the wilderness, in the tabernacle of meeting. What does it say? On the first day of the second month of the second year. The first day of the second month of the second year. Okay? The tabernacle has been up for exactly what? 1 month. It was put up on the first day of the first month of the second year. We do some jumping around in Torah. We've got to understand, and when these dates come up, we got to think about how they fit into the picture. First day of the second month of the second year. What happens in the 14th day of the first month of the second year? This is the first day of the second month of the second year. It means we've already had Passover again, haven't we? Do you think that would be important when we're going to be taking a census of the assembly of Israel's seed? We're going to see that it is. I put just a reminder. This is the first day of the second month of the second year. On the first day of the first month, the tabernacle was raised. Yasher says that we dedicated the altar for 12 days and then had Passover on the 14th day. Let's take a look at this particular scripture. You haven't been in Yasher for months. All of Leviticus. I think the last note we saw in Yasher was, now read Leviticus. Read all of Leviticus. So we haven't been in Yasher at all, hardly. But I want to go to it today. And this is how we're going to start our day. I know it's 20 after, but this is how we're going to start our day. It says, and in the 12th month, in the 23rd day of the month, Moses took Aaron and his sons and dressed them in their garments and anointed them and did unto them as Yahovah commanded him. And Moses brought up all the offerings which Yahovah had on that day, all the offerings, all the korban which Yahovah had on that day commanded him. Moses afterward took Aaron and his sons and said to them, for 7 days you shall remain at the door of the tabernacle. Remember, this is the 23rd day of the 12th month of the first year. There is no tabernacle of meetings yet. You just don't see it. The translators translate Ohel Me'od as the tabernacle of meeting over and over and over in Exodus. But we saw it was not until Exodus 40 that we actually set up the tabernacle. So what is it that these men are in? Could it be the Ohel of meeting that we've been talking about all this time, the tent of meetings? This is the tent of meeting that Yahovah kept speaking to Moses about. So Moses afterward took Aaron and his sons and said to them, for 7 days you shall remain at the door of the tabernacle, is what it says, of the tent. For thus I am commanded. Here, let me just show you something. Here, this is Leviticus 8. And you shall not go outside the door of the tabernacle of meeting. That's what it says in Torah, in the New King James Version. You shall not go outside the tent of meetings for 7 days until the day of your consecration are ended. For 7 days he shall consecrate you. This is all in agreement with what we're seeing in Torah. I love that about Yashar. And Aaron and his sons did all that Jehovah commanded them through Moses. And they remained for 7 days at the door of it says tabernacle. What was it? The door of the tent? There is no tabernacle yet. Let me read you my note. The court of the tabernacle was not even set up until the first day, which is when they began to minister before Jehovah. Here's 40 again. On the first day of the first month, you shall set up the tabernacle of the tent of meetings, the Mishkan of the tent of meetings. This is the first day of the first month. We're still on the 23rd day of the 12th month. 7 days before. Really, 8 days before. You shall put up the ark of the testimony. You shall put in the ark of the testimony and partition off the ark with the veil. Then in verse 4 or 8 of 40, it says, you shall set up the court all around and hang up the screen at the court gate. So there's no court either. I thought, well, maybe there's a court, but no, there's no court either. Now it says, and on the 8th day, being the first day of the first month in the second year from the Israelites' departure from Egypt, Moses erected the sanctuary. And Moses put up all the furniture of the tabernacle and all the furniture of the sanctuary. And he did all that Jehovah had commanded him. 8th day. Here's Leviticus 9. And it came to pass on the 8th day when Moses called Aaron and his sons and the elders of Israel. And he said to Aaron, take for yourselves a young bull as a sin offering and a ram as a burnt offering without blemish, whole, and offer them whole and alive, and offer them before Jehovah's face. I'm going to do a burnt offering. Here's again 40. And it came to pass in the first month of the second year, on the first day of the month, that the tabernacle was raised up. I just want you to see the timeline and understand when things are happening. This is really important that we do this. And Moses called Aaron and his sons, and they brought the olah and the kata'ah for themselves and Israel's seed, as Jehovah commanded Moses. Remember, this is happening now on the day that we're going to set up the tabernacle. And on that day, the two sons of Aaron, Nadab and Abihu. This is the day. Well, it's the day after. Remember, they were consecrated for 7 days. This is the first day that they were fully consecrated and full-time priests. They took strange fire and brought it before Jehovah, who had not commanded them. And the fire went out from before Jehovah and consumed them, and they died before Jehovah on that day. This is the same day that Jehovah appeared to Israel, the same day that we fell on our faces, the same day that the tabernacle was being set up. It helps us to see how all these pieces fit together. Then on the day when Moses had completed to erect the sanctuary, the princes of Israel's seed began to bring their offerings before Jehovah for the dedication of the altar. We haven't got here yet in number 7, but we're going to see this in number 7. You can see how we go back and forth in time in Torah. They brought up their offerings, each prince, korban, each prince for 1 day, a prince each day for 12 days. This is day 1 of this, what do they call this? Complete the sanctuary, the dedication of the altar. The altar. This is probably the bronze altar that we're talking about that sits outside the tabernacle of meeting in the court. And all the offerings which they brought, each man in his day. Remember, they're going to bring it for 12 days. This is day 1 through day 12. And all the offerings which they brought, each man in his day, on his day, 1 silver charger weighing 130 shekels, 1 silver bowl of 70 shekels after the shekel of the sanctuary, both of them full of fine flour mingled with oil for a mincha offering, for a mincha. I should have put that offering in red. It's not there. For a mincha. 1 spoon weighing 10 shekels of gold, full of incense. 1 young bullock, 1 ram, a sheep, that's a mature sheep. 1 lamb, which would be a baby sheep of the first year, for an olah. 1 kid of the goats, there's the goat, for the kata'ah, and for the slaughter of the shalamim, 2 oxen, 5 rams, 5 he-goats, 5 lambs of the first year. If we look at Torah, we're going to see this is exactly what it says here. I don't think I'm going to go ahead and read all this, but it's exactly the same things that we're going to be bringing. I double-checked it. Now it says, read all of Leviticus. We're going to keep reading. Thus did the 12 princes of Israel day by day, each man in his day. And it was after this, on the 13th day of the month, 13th day of the month, that Yahovah commanded Israel's seed to observe the Passover. Who's going to observe the Passover? Israel's seed is going to observe the Passover. And Israel's seed kept the Passover in its season, in the 14th day of the month. As Yahovah had commanded Moses, so did Israel's seed. Well, let's read Numbers 1. This is where we're starting today. And Yahovah spoke to Moses in the wilderness of Sinai, in the tent of meeting, the tabernacle of meeting. I don't remember if that's a tent or tabernacle. Let's look, just out of curiosity. In the Ohel of meeting, the tent of meeting. In the tent of meeting. The tabernacle is still being called the tent of meeting. It's a tent, and we're meeting with Yahovah, just as we did in the first tent. But now we're talking about the big tent, the tabernacle. On the first day of the 2nd month in the 2nd year after they came out of the land of Egypt. Take a census. Who's he speaking to? Moses. Take a census of all the assembly of Israel's seed. The assembly, here's the word that we're talking about, is Edah. Edah. Assemblage of Israel's seed. According to their family. Fathers' houses. Their family. I think we're talking about the tribes. Fathers' houses. In number. Name. All males by their heads. Tribes, families, really fathers' houses, in number, names. I know it's weird how they say it. By their father's houses according to the number of names. Every male individually. Every male by their heads. Count them out. Tell us how many we have. Look what it says. From 20 years old and above, all who are able to go to war in Israel. When we talk about males, we're talking about zakar. Here's the word, or here's the Hebrew word, zakar. We're talking about males. Man or animals can be zakar. There are no lady zakar. From 20 years old and above, who are able to go to war in Israel. You and Aaron shall number them by their armies. Here's the literal translation, a literal version, literal, L-I-T-L-I, what do they call it? Literal translation of the Holy Bible. Lift up the heads of all the congregation of, they say, sons of Israel, by their families, by their fathers' houses, according to the number of names, every male by their heads. By their heads. They say every male individually. But yeah, that's what we're talking about, by their heads. Men, 20 years old, able to go to war. Those are the ones that we are going to count. This is an old note. These are the ones who are not defiled with women, for they are virgins. You know, I have some teaching about this and how this really needs to be interpreted. We want to make these 144,000 of Yehovah. I don't even know 144,000 is an accurate number. It's not in Torah. It's something that we see in the New Testament. But certainly there are servants that Yehovah is raising in these last days. I like to refer to them as the 144,000-ish, so that we at least have an idea on who these men might be. But what makes a man a virgin? How are we defiled by women? I've got some teaching on this in my 144,000 series of articles. Let me just show you where they are real quick. Oh, here it is. Virgin of Israel, right here. It was in the Born Again series. That's the first of about 7 or 8 articles. But if you want to learn about the virgin, how is a man defiled by a woman, what it means to be a virgin, remember, these are men who left the kingdom of their birth, were born a second time, and now are new men before Yehovah. They haven't gone back to their wallows. They haven't gone back to their vomit. They're fully Yehovah's men. They're virgins. Born a second time. Elohim kind. Well, again, part of a much larger story. These are the ones who are not defiled with women, for they are virgins. These are the ones who follow the Lamb, wherever he goes. This is why I hate reading the New Testament, is because we got so much of this stuff. I'm going to just get rid of this. All right. Take a census. Here's something that I found in Chronicles. Moreover, Amaziah gathered Judah together and set over them captains of thousands, captains of hundreds, according to their fathers' houses throughout Judah and Benjamin. And he numbered them from 20 years old and above, and found them to be 300,000 choice men, able to go to war, who could handle spear and shield. I don't know. He didn't tell us that we had to be able to handle spear and shield on this particular account, did he? He just said 20 years old and above, all who are able to go to war in Israel. You and Aaron shall number them by their armies. We're talking about men. Ezra, men. We're not even talking about the Ger, although I would think there probably is going to be very few Ger, if any, among us at this time. Consider this. This is the second month of this second year, first day of the second month of the second year, we've already had Passover. That means all the Gers who were with us, or the Ger who were with us, Gerim who were with us, would have become Ezra men at this point. Cool. So they would have been numbered among these people. You know, we started with 600,000 when we left Egypt. We saw that in Exodus 12. But there was people that were killed with the golden calf. There were people that were killed because they were whining in the wilderness because they didn't get enough meat. There was people killed throughout this time. But now, here we are back up to, we're going to see today, 600,000 again. So interesting. But again, who is he counting? He's counting the Ezra men. We've seen this over and over and over. Israel's seed, B'nai Israel, are the Ezra men, the native-born men. Native-born. I mean, even that is so perverted, because what does it mean to be native-born? We want to make it born in Egypt or born in the Promised Land. But they never even saw the Promised Land, did they? No, we're born in a spiritual birth. That's what it is, a spiritual birth. Let's keep going. 20 years and above. Let's see what I have here. From 20 years and above, all who are able to go to war in Israel, you and Aaron shall number them by their armies. And with you there shall be a man from every tribe, each one the head of his father's house. A man, Ish, from every tribe. He's the one that's going to represent his tribe. These are the names of the men who shall stand with you from Reuben. Look at this. It appears that Yehovah chose these men, not Moses, Aaron, or the people. Yehovah is going to choose who's going to represent each one of these tribes. He's picking these men. These are the names of the men who shall stand with you. From Reuben, Elazar. From Simeon, I'm not going to go ahead and read these. You can take a look at them. From Simeon, from Judah, Nashan, son of Amminadab. From Issachar, Nathaniel. From Zebulun, Eliab. From Joseph's seed. From Ephraim, Joseph's seed, there it is. From Joseph's seed, or for Joseph's seed. From Ephraim, Elishama. From Manasseh, Gamliel. He goes on. From Benjamin, Avidan. From Dan, Ahiezar. From Asher, Pagiel. From Gad, Eliasaph. From Naphtali, Ahira. These were chosen from the assembly, leaders of their fathers' tribes, heads of the divisions of Israel. Same word there, ha'adah, from the congregation or the assembly. They go together, that has got to go with the other word. Then Moses and Aaron took these men who had been mentioned by name. By name. Like I said, Yehovah picked these men. And they assembled all the assembly together on the first day of the second month. And they recited their ancestry by family, by their fathers' houses, according to the number of names. That's making it a little more clear, isn't it? It says recited their ancestry by families. Again, tribes. I guess it would even be tribe at this point, because each man is going to recite the names of his tribe by their fathers' houses, according to the number of names from 20 years old and above, each one individually. There was other men But if you weren't 20 years old and above, you weren't numbered among Israel's seed. Had to be able to go to war. As Jehovah commanded Moses, so he numbered them in the wilderness of Sinai. Now, Reuben's seed, Israel's oldest son, their genealogies by their families, by their father's house, according to the number of the names, every male individually from 20 years old and above, all who were able to go to war. Are we clear on who these men are? There are no ladies being numbered among Israel's seed. These were numbered of the tribe of Reuben, 46,500. 46,500. From Simeon's seed, this is B'nai Simeon. B'nai Simeon. They're not his sons. No, it's multiple generations of men. But again, these are spiritually born men because who are we numbering? Israel's seed. We can read this one more time. They're all going to say exactly the same thing. Simeon's seed. From Simeon's seed, for their genealogies, by their families, by their father's house, as those who were numbered according to the number of names, every male individually from 20 years old and above, all who were able to go to war. Those who were numbered among the tribe of Simeon were 59,000. So let's keep an eye. 46. This is 59. Let's just look at the big numbers. From Gad's seed, we had 45,000. From Judah's seed, we had 74,000. This is the biggest one. Largest tribe. Judah. 74,600 men. From Issachar, 54,000. From Zebulun, 57,000. From Joseph's sons, Ephraim's seed. Joseph's sons, Ephraim's seed. Their genealogies, what are we talking? 40,000. From Manasseh, 32,200. This is the smallest tribe. So we're all between 32,000 and 74,000. Most of them are around 40 to 50, it seems. Benjamin, 35. Whoa, look at that. 32, 35. Oh, that's another low one. Benjamin, 35,000. I just got through saying most of them are between 40 and 50. But here's another 35. That's a 37, 30. Yeah, 35. Dan, 62,000. Asher, 42,000 or 41,000. And Naphtali, 53,000. These are the ones who were numbered, whom Moses and Aaron numbered with the leaders of Israel, 12 men. And remember, they're the leaders that Yahweh picked, each one representing his father's house. So all who were numbered of Israel's seed by their father's houses, from 20 years old and above, all who were able to go to war in Israel, all who were numbered were 603,550. 603,550 men. 500,000. But the Levites were not numbered among them by their father's tribe. For Yahweh had spoken to Moses, saying, only the tribe of Levi you shall not number, nor take a census of them among Israel's seed. I had to ask, why did they do that? Well, they're going to answer that question later. But you shall appoint the Levites over the tabernacle of the testimony. Oh, now this is interesting. The tabernacle of the testimony is how they translated. Remember, no definite article on the tabernacle, but there is a definite article. Here it is on the testimony. There's the da, or the ha, and that's the edud, ha edud. But it's the Mishkan, the residence of the testimony. We could say it this way, the testimony's residence. It's interesting because we talk about it being Yehovah's residence so often. Here we're talking about the Mishkan Edut, the testimony's residence. Remember, the testimony is what's in the ark that has the mercy seat on it. That's behind the veil. That's in front of the golden altar, the golden table, and the lampstands. That's inside the tabernacle. The focus is on those words that were given to us by Yehovah. Mishkan ha'edut. But you shall appoint the Levites over the tabernacle of the testimony, the testimony's residence, over all the furnishings, and over all things that belong to it. They shall carry the tabernacle, the Mishkan, and all its furnishings. They shall attend to it and camp around the tabernacle. Oh, this is really interesting to see how the camping is going to take place. And when the tabernacle is to go forward, the Levites shall take it down. And when the tabernacle is to be set up, the Levites shall set it up. It says, the outsider who comes near shall be put to death. This is Zohar. The outsider who comes near shall be put to death. You know, oftentimes when we see this word Zohar, when I first saw Zohar and started studying Zohar, it seemed like Zohar were the people who, you know, there was a process by which a man becomes a Gentile, becomes an Ezra man. He was a Gentile, then he became a Toshab, then he became a Ger, and then he became an Ezra, a Passover. But I felt, and it still seems to be some of that a man who is a Gentile, he now meets the man of Elohim, whether he be a Ger or an Ezra, and he becomes a Toshab. That's when we become a Toshab. But now the man has to make a decision. Are you going to remain a Gentile, or are you going to become one of Yehovah's people, a Ger? It appeared to me for a long time that the Zohar was the man who chose not to become a Ger, even though he knew the truth. He wanted to remain a Gentile and live in that kingdom. That's what it seemed like to me. So but I've come to see that this word Zohar is looking at a class of people and comparing them with another class of people. They're different. So here we're talking about the Levites coming near the tabernacle when they're taking it down and setting it up. If an outsider, who would be the outsider, one of Israel's seed, would be the Zohar who we're talking about, were to come near and touch any of these things, he gets put to death. We don't want to do this. We want to keep our fellow Israelites safe. And so they make a perimeter around the tabernacle. You were going to see today that the Levites are going to be the ones who are camping all around, immediately around the tabernacle. The tribes are going to be outside of even the Levites. 3 on each side, 3 tribes on each side. It's neat to see how it all fits together. Israel's seed shall pitch their tents, everyone by his own camp, everyone by his standard, according to their armies. Israel's seed shall pitch their tents. These are the men's tents. If you have a Ger who dwells with you, he's inside your camp. But these are Israel's, the Ezra men's tents. Everyone by his own camp. Everyone by his own standard, according to their armies. But Israel's seed dwelt in tents in the wilderness. Oh, it says, and camp. They pitch their tents. It just says camp. It doesn't say, oh hell, anything about ohel. It just says camp. Incline. Here they say specifically to pitch a tent. But it's camp. Israel's and camp, Israel's seed, each man by his own encampment. 3 different words. Kana, ma, kana. I guess it's a related word, certainly. And then everyone by his own standard, his degal, his flag, according to their armies. That's the zabah. But the Levites shall camp, but the Levites shall camp around the tabernacle of the testimony. That was the adut, Mishkan adut again. That there may be no wrath on the assembly of Israel's seed. That's the word that we were talking about, the edah, the assemblage of Israel's seed, B'nai Israel. Israel's seed's assembly is another way to say it. But the Levites shall camp around the tabernacle of the testimony's Mishkan, testimony's residence, that there may be no wrath on the assembly of Israel's seed. And the Levites shall keep charge of the testimony of the tabernacle of the testimony. Same thing again. Mishkan ha-edut. Thus Israel's seed did, according to all that Yehovah commanded Moses, so they did. And that completes Numbers 1. I think I've got number 2 that I want to go through, and then I want to go back to a little bit of Yasher if we can. It's just a teeny little bit of Yasher. So let's see what we can do here. And Yehovah spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, every one of Israel's seed shall camp by his own standard, beside the emblems of his father's house. I would like to know what the emblems, what their flags looked like. Wouldn't that be fun to know what their flags looked like? The emblems of their father's house. They shall camp some distance from the tabernacle of meeting. Why? Because the Levites are going to camp directly in front, well, around the tent of meeting, the tabernacle, the Mishkan edut, ha-edut, the testimony's residence. I like that. Well, now look at this. I've got something that I want to open here. Here it is. This is what we're talking about. Here's the tabernacle. We're going to see Moses and Aaron are on the east side. The Kohathites are going to be on the south side. The Gershonites are going to be on the west side. And the Merarites are going to be on the north side. Then we've got beyond that, so remember, they're the closest. Got to protect all these guys, because if these guys come near to the tabernacle when they're putting it up or sending it down, harm will come to them. They'll die. So we're going to have Judah, Issachar, Zebulun on the north side. The east side. Reuben, Simeon, Gad, south. Ephraim, Manasseh, Benjamin in the west. And Dan, Asher, and Naphtali on the north. Now, interestingly enough, and I remember I talked to you about this when we buried Jacob. This was the day that Esau died. We buried Jacob, and we were carrying him to the cave at Machpelah, Hebron. Actually, it was a town next to Hebron, just a very short distance from Hebron. And this is exactly how we carried him. Judah, Issachar, Zebulun on the front, and then on each of the two sides we had Dan, Asher, Naphtali, Gad, Simeon, Reuben, and then Benjamin, Manasseh, and Ephraim, and Joseph, being the king, followed behind, and Levi also followed behind. Isn't that interesting? So we carried Jacob. This is according to Jacob's instructions. And Jacob even said this is how we were going to carry the tabernacle in the wilderness. Let's take a look at it. I'll show you where it says it. It's kind of neat. This is Yasher 56. Nukshan. I don't even know what Nukshan means right at this point. It's been a while since I wrote this note. See Yasher 56. This is the order Jacob was carried by his sons to be buried at Machpelah. Howbeit, this is Jacob speaking, I believe. Howbeit, take heed, I pray you, that none of your sons carry me. Only you, only yourselves. And this is the manner you shall do unto me. Remember, he was talking to his sons, saying that their sons are not to carry him, that they're supposed to carry him. And this is the manner you shall do unto me. When you carry my body to go with it to the land of Canaan to bury me, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun shall carry my bier on the eastern side. These are all the correct, not necessarily the same order, but all the same people on each side. Reuben, Simeon, and Gad on the south, Ephraim, Manasseh, Benjamin on the west, Dan, Asher, Naphtali on the north. Let not Levi carry with you, for he and his sons will carry the ark of the covenant of Jehovah with the Israelites in the camp. Neither let carry the covenant of Jehovah. This is prophetic. We're not going to leave Egypt for over 100 years, probably 150 years. But here he is talking about how the Levi is going to carry the covenant, carry the ark. Look at that. For he and his sons will carry the ark of the covenant of Jehovah with the Israelites in the camp. Neither let Joseph my son carry, for as a king, so let his glory be. Howbeit Ephraim and Manasseh shall be in their stead. Isn't that interesting? I wrote an article on this. This is the Jacob died. Esau died. Esau, well, it's all part of a very long story. I don't know if you'll even remember it. But the land was left to Israel's seed, Jacob. I guess this is when that's what it was. When Isaac died, remember that is Jacob and Esau's dad. Jacob said, I want the land. You can have all the stuff. You can have the servants, the gold, the silver, all the things that daddy has, is what Esau took. He says, I want the land. And Esau was encouraged by one of his relatives to take the land, to take all the stuff, because the land wasn't theirs. It was the Canaanites' land. But Jacob knew that he wanted to take something different. It was a spiritual kingdom. Didn't even have possession of it yet. But he wanted the land. And with the land, of course, comes the cave of Machpelah. Well, Esau heard that they were burying Jacob in the cave and said, hey, that's my cave. Well, it wasn't. They had done it by a covenant. Put it in a jar, by contract, covenant, a will, if you will. And a brouhaha broke out. And one of the deaf and dumb sons of Israel saw what was going on with Esau and came and took off his head during the battle. And Esau died at the very time that Jacob was being buried. Oh, it's so interesting. I'm going off track here. Let's go back. Anyway, it's a good article. You'll want to read it if you get a chance. On the east side, toward the rising of the sun, Those of the standard of the forces of Judah shall camp according to their armies, and Nahshon, the son of Minadab, shall be the leader of Israel, or of Judah's seed. And his army was numbered at 74,600. Well, we're going through the same numbers. These are those who camped next to him. This is Judah, was Issachar and Zebulun, for a total of 186,400. Now it says on the south side was the standard of the forces of Reuben. Reuben's seed, Simeon's seed, Gad's seed, 151,450. They shall be the second to break camp. Oh, so we had the first to break camp. These shall break camp first. So we're not only talking about how they're going to camp and where they're going to camp, but we're also talking about where they're going to march. Again, we're talking about how they're going to march. And the tabernacle of meeting shall move out with the camp of the Levites in the middle of the camps. Second to break camp. Maybe we're not marching, circling the tabernacle. Maybe it's Judah's seed, then Reuben's seed, then the tabernacle, and then the next two. So it's on the west side. Remember, this is where they're going to camp. This is Ephraim. Next to Ephraim is going to be Manasseh and Benjamin. Together, they are 180,000, so 150 to 180,000 so far. They shall be the third to break camp. And the standard forces on the north side. You know, here's something that I look for. This is something that maybe you might want to consider. Look at how this says it. It says on the east side, on the east side, on the west side. But now it says it a little bit differently. The standard of the forces with Dan shall be on the north side. You know, I don't think there's a huge significance in how this is worded right now, but sometimes it is. Sometimes we have to look at that. Why did Yehovah say it differently? And by color coding it the way I do, helps me to see that there's something different going on. The standard of the forces Dan shall be on the north side. Dan is going to be with Asher and Naphtali. And the army which, and all who were numbered of the forces of Dan were 157,600. So 157,000, 180,000, 150,000, 151,000, and 186,000. 186 to 150-ish. All right, now it says, these are the ones who were numbered of Israel's seed by their fathers' houses. All who were numbered according to their armies, the forces were 603,550. Same number, just broken down a little bit differently. But the Levites were not numbered among Israel's seed, just as Jehovah commanded Moses. Thus Israel's seed did according to all that Jehovah commanded Moses. So they camped by their standards, and so they broke camp, each one by his family, according to his father's house. I like systems. I like to see that Yehovah is extremely organized in how he wants things to be done. You know, when you have an army, it's got to be set up well and organized correctly so that things are done in order. When we were Boy Scouts, you know, we came in with our troops and we knew how to set up the camps and where we were supposed to be when we had a big camp Boy Scout meeting. For me, it gives me some idea of the organization that goes into it. They knew we knew where we were supposed to be, and that's where we camped. Israel's seed not only knows where they're supposed to camp, but they know who's going to move things. They know when they march, who's going to be marching in which order. I think that's neat. I like that Yehovah has a system of doing things. Well, from here, I want to go to Yasher, back to Yasher. We just have a couple more things that I want to cover here. On the second month, on the first day thereof, Yehovah spoke unto Moses, saying, Number the heads of all the males of Israel's seed, from 20 years old and upward, thou and thy brother Aaron and the 12 princes of Israel. And Moses did so. And Aaron came with 12 princes of Israel, and they numbered Israel's seed in the wilderness of Sinai. And the number of Israel's seed by the houses of their fathers, from 20 years old and upward, were 603,550. All right. Well, you know what? It's early. I didn't get a whole lot further than this. I really thought this would take longer than it did. I think I want to break, and maybe we'll just do some questions today. I know we had a whole bunch of questions last week. I do not record this question session, so it will be a shorter class for those who are joining us online today. But we'll continue with Numbers. Well, will be Numbers 3 and 4, and potentially 5 next week. Hey, thank you for joining me. Please come back again. Thanks, you guys.